The Inn at the End of Things is an Acorn Arts and Entertainment podcast, independently produced by a small group of creators in Southeast Michigan. Since we run the show ad-free, we rely entirely on support from listeners like you to keep the Inn's hearthfire burning through the night. You can support us and receive bonus content with a one-time donation at www.acornartsandentertainment.com/The Inn, or by joining the Hall of Patrons within our Patreon community. Even the price of a cup of coffee goes a long way to keeping the lights on for our little inn. As folktale enthusiasts instead of academics, this is your friendly reminder that our folk and fairy tales come from the older, grimmer end of the woods and can contain material not suitable for all audiences, so listener discretion is advised. And recommended for your 5-star stay with us, the Inn is best experienced somewhere cozy with a good blanket. Thanks so much for your support, and welcome. Pilgrim, come in! Spring is finally showing her face, and a canvas of miracles is ours tonight. Here at the Inn at the End of Things. Have you ever seen such a sunset? Reds and golds cavorting over purples. Makes you glad to be upright. Come in, and feel free to leave the door open behind you. We have to enjoy our spring breezes even when it still carries a chill, before all the bugs come out to play as it gets warmer. Now then, let's see you properly. You've gotten taller since the last time you were here. I don't know what they've been feeding you, but you're sitting taller in your boots. Straighter. Suits you. Here then, you take this thermos of nice warm milk tea and come out with me back to the stables. We've had a fine team of 4 horses come in with the milord, what's his name? Yes, the Earl of Arundel and his retinue. I suppose they're fine enough chaps, but terribly boring. Arundel is a tiny nonsense kingdom, so I'll spare you their particular history, and we'll just nip around back with Eliza and the horses before anybody needs anything. You must see the horses. They're simply magnificent. Oh, mind your step down. Take a deep breath in and out. Take in the smell of the new violets and good green clover. And another breath. And out. And you let your hands fall down at your sides. And you find that your shoulders naturally relax. And your fingers dip down into the new spring grasses on either side of the cow path. You can just catch a hint of the lilac, lingering somewhere around the corner. And you breathe in deeply again, drinking in the smell of wild oats and warm grain. And out again, gently pushing all thoughts of the rest of the day to the side. You'll collect your luggage and your thoughts again in the morning, to be sure. But for now, we are here, breathing the spring air together in green pastures. Ah, hello, Sarge. Pilgrim, meet the sergeant. This little goat all but runs the yard. And there's Beulah and Tallulah. Yes, hello, lovelies. Those are my good girls. I'm sure you'll see Lula and Hula running around here somewhere. Well, don't look at me. I didn't name you. The barn and pastures are Eliza's domains, and she does as she sees fit. You'll like Eliza. Everyone does, especially the animals. Eliza, are you back here?
In the barn.
Well, come on. She's no doubt gotten the horses combed down and fed by now.
Not nearly. I could use an extra pair of hands with this last gray. That Earl's groom tossed me the reins and took off to the dining hall without a second word. Can you imagine with beauties like these? I've got 3 of them in stalls now, but here, this pretty fella, have you ever seen such a pretty prince in your life? How about you, friend? Is he not a king of horses?
I'm in love with him. You feel free to stay with us as long as you please, mister. What a beauty, Eliza. I know you're a happy girl tonight.
Especially after that tray of sandwiches Dighton brought out earlier and the milk tea. Good luck to you all with his earlness in there. I'll just snuggle up in the hayloft and let you enjoy his nibs all to yourself.
Well, I figured that while we're entertaining our guests, I would bring you our good traveler here to help bed down the animals while we get the Earl and his entourage to their rooms, as that may take a while. I would not recommend going into the common room, dining hall, or lobby for the next few hours, unless you want to run into the most tedious group of sops this side of the Flat-Top Mountains.
I'll keep a good watch over this one here. Good luck. Perks of running the stables. You don't have to deal with the people. Here now. Take up that curry comb and that brush there, and I'll lead our prince into his stall. Got plenty of good fresh straw for you there, big fella. And I have a good nose bag for you when we've got you nice and combed down. Come here to his side with me so he can see you. We never come up behind a horse, right? Nobody likes folks sneaking up in their blind spot. So we'll just come around his shoulder here. Yes, me lord, how do you like them apples? Never met a horse that didn't love an apple. Why don't you give him one? Just hold in your palm there. Let him smell it. Good. And there he goes. Big velvety nibbles. Look at your good manners. I guess we're going to have to call you Prince, since you eat just as dainty as one, don't you? Horses are just the best, most loving animals on the planet. Who wants to draw about with earls and princes when you play around in warm hay with these beauties? Let's get that bit out of your mouth there, Prince. And now, who's ready for a good nose bag? That's right. It's easy to forget how fragile they are, isn't it? They're so big, it's easy to only see the power in the flanks or the strength in the haunches, the endurance or the extra inches in the jumps. To miss the delicate lashes, the quivering nose, the uncertain first step. But you look into those warm, liquid eyes and remember, they just need to be loved like anyone else, no matter how big they seem. My brother's like that. You've met Waylon? Only in passing, of course. Don't take it personally. He's the cellar master, so he's the busiest one of all of us. He rarely has time to stop and chat unless it's early morning. You'll have to head to the bar to catch him. Too many thirsty folks these days in need of a friendly ear. He's got the biggest heart, just like these horses here, but he needs someone to help keep his head steady, just like this one here. To let him know he's safe and protected, too. Not just the one doing the protecting. We're all like that in our own ways, I suppose. Just need the extra reminder that we're safe sometimes. But it can be hard to remember, especially when you've been on the run most of your life. Even after all these years, it's still so hard for us. The nightmares don't go away, even when you know you found your home. Another stop, another night with a roof, another night without a roof. The cold, it stays with you. I think you've met most of us by now. Arlen won't shut up about you. There's a lot of us, but the Swankin family is usually found lingering around the food. There's me. I'm the youngest and stablemaster here. And then there's Waylon, who's the cellar keeper. And then you've already met Dairin, the head cook, and Roshin, who takes care of the table service. Arlen, who takes care of the laundry. Kian, who looks after the coat room. And Aiden, our gardener, who looks after all the greenery we keep on the grounds. Told you there was a lot of us Swankins. Here, take this bucket of feed and come with me back out to the yard. Gotta get the chickens a little something before they go in the hutch for the night. They're sharper than most, our ladies, although I guess that's not saying much for chickens. Here, let's check to see if we've got lucky with the eggs. Glad I looked. 7's pretty good for the evening. Look at the size of that one. I swear they swap their eggs with the geese when I'm not looking. I don't know what kitchen scraps Kath adds to the feed. She won't tell me the secret ingredient, but it's gotta be the peas. Maybe they're magic peas, and that's why she won't say anything. She knows how I feel about magic. Magic's for the inside of the inn. You won't find it out here. It's a crutch, magic is, a handicap. You're minding your business doing things in a perfectly sensible way, and then suddenly up comes some humbug at a country fair selling the latest quick and easy spell to do it all for you. Write it all for you, say it all for you, shovel it up for you, and then before you know it, you're hooked. Addicted to the magic bean, the magic spell, the magic dirty dish rag that does everything all in a jiffy, and always the wrong way. Sure, it'll be fine for a while, but it's never done well. It's never done right. It's done quick and easy, and you'll have to fix it up again later, when it breaks down again. And that's if you're not dealing with all the rules of threes and karmic paradoxes and thunder and lightning and butterfly monsoons, and who knows what other idiotic curses the magic comes with, because you just had to get yourself a love spell. That's enough for these greedy little chicklets here. You like Highland cows? No good. We've got 2 of them. That's Betsy and Bonnie, and the other 3 are Tinga, Tiff, and Albert. Might even let you braid their hair if you're lucky. Yes, girls. How are my good girls? Come here. Hey, girls. Come on, Tiff. Never named a cow better. Miss Tiff is always starting something. Would you like an extra sandwich? Dairin always packs enough for an army. Here, hand me that thermos. That milk tea should be nice and hot. There it goes, still steaming. I've my reasons to be careful around magic, and I don't keep time anymore for earls or lords or kings. You've met Arlen now and seen her wing? She wasn't born with feathers, you know. It's funny to see how different the stories can get. Some say there were 12 brothers, some 7, some 6. All of them forget about the sisters. Some say they turned into cows or ducks or ravens. It depends on the village you hear it in. But the fire was always the same, and the nettles were always the same. And it always starts with a hunt. I get my love of horses from my father. One of my earliest memories is of him swinging me up in his saddle, and we would ride through the Kingswood so fast tears would spring up in my eyes, and our laughter would ring out for miles. He never met a horse he didn't love. He had a whole stable full of elderly mares and geldings that he'd keep long after they were too old to put a cart or lead a hunt. "They're family, Eliza," he'd say, "and we never leave family behind." His hunts were the things of legend. Every year, kings and princes from distant lands would gather at my father's keep for the great hunt of the summer star. And the night I turned 8 proved no different. We must have had at least 100 different dignitaries and their servants and their animals all crammed together with us, all eager for the next morning and the call of the horn to signal the day. My siblings were all dressed in their finest, and we were all on our best behavior, for Waylon had promised to personally tan our hides if we put a toe out of line. It was his 16th year, and this was to be his year to lead the hunt. And boy, did he make sure that everybody knew it. I wouldn't start any trouble that night. I just wanted to see the horses. After the dancing and feasting was done, I snuck away into the stables and fell asleep surrounded by the gentle whickering of quiet, sleek sentinels. That's why I was up early enough to see them all off at dawn. Bleary-eyed with straw in my hair, the horn blew out into the frigid morning, and the world became a blur of black and brown and palomino lightning plunging into the forest. The lords and knights all gleamed, but none brighter than Father in his armor at the head of the charge, as bright as the summer star twinkling in the dawn light. We would not see my father again for 3 months. I remember when he stumbled back to us out of the forest, gaunt and emaciated as if he had not eaten in days. I remember how he fell upon Cian's shoulders, weeping with joy, how close he pulled us all to him with knotted fingers worn down to the bone, how the woman who trailed behind him smiled with her teeth and not with her eyes, how her eyes darted back and forth with a hunger we could not yet know, how she wrapped her fingers around his shoulder, pulled him away from us. The wedding was held 3 days later. Private ceremony in the chapel. We were informed by her servants that we were not required to attend, and stayed for most of the day, locked in Waylon's room, huddled together and uncertain about what the future would bring. After the wedding, she came to see us, wearing our mother's crown and flanked by guards. She had a full tea service laid out for us and told us calmly as she poured sand from a silver pot into each of our cups that we would no longer be welcome in our father's company. She spoke of how my siblings had spurred my father on into the forest during the great hunt, how this had caused him to see the white stag that leaped farther and farther into the trees, how he had wandered for weeks in the woods, famished and alone, how he had come across the old woman along the charcoal path who promised him a way out if he would only but marry her daughter. How that daughter now was our queen. How we now would bow before her or suffer the consequences. We did not bow then, and we do not bow now. I may have only seen 8 winters, but I was my father's daughter. We bow to none. So she had us thrown in the dungeon. Chains and crusts of bread with rainwater, you know how the stories go. She had us each work in the castle, doing the jobs nobody else wanted. Waylon did all the mopping for the cellar master. Dayron did the scullery jobs the kitchen staff delighted in making difficult for her. Roisin had the hardest of it. Had to work right under the evil woman's eye, serving her meals and bringing her cups and changing out her privy. She sure liked her cups. I had the easiest job of it in the stables, I think. The stable hands and grooms all loved us well, and one night they helped us escape on a mail carriage heading to the next kingdom over. When the courier stopped for his midday meal, we snuck out from between the packs and ran into the woods as fast as we could. They must have seen us. There's no way 6 children run off into the woods without you hearing it. We owe those couriers and groomsmen and stable hands our lives. That first night was a rough one of many, friend. The great forest at night is no place for an 8-year-old. That was a hard time. But after a while, I saw the summer star pointing above us in the trees, and we followed it for a while, as quietly as we could. Somehow we survived for 3 days before coming to the tower. The ruins yawned up out of the roots of the forest, covered in moss. But there was a roof and a door, and we were delirious with hunger and thirst and fatigue. Kia knocked on the door, and an old woman welcomed us inside, to a good soup bubbling away under a hot fire. She took us in and cleaned us up and fed us and cared for our hurts until we resembled human children again. We lived that way for a few years together, babes in the woods. But one night at supper, she sighed wearily and held out a shining ball of golden thread. "If ye so choose," she said, "throw this down, and your father will come to you. That is all I may say." We stayed up all night discussing the dangers among ourselves and finally took a vote. I only wanted to tell him that we were all right. But no use crying over spilled yarn now. Arlen threw down the ball, and we watched it roll off into the trees, shining in the night. At high noon the next day, my father rode into the clearing on a fine black stallion. We embraced and wept and held each other all day through the night by the fire. Father looked better than before, although his eyes still had that hollow, empty gaze he had brought back from the forest. Our stepmother had raged at our disappearance for months, but as there had been no word of us anywhere over the years, she had taken to surrounding herself with flattering courtiers and ever-changing fashions. We stayed up all through the night singing old songs and listening to Father's stories, while the old woman knitted contently in the corner. He left just before daybreak, taking the magic ball of yarn with him, and promising he would be back with gifts and supplies for us all soon. And so he would come, first every few months, then every couple weeks, and finally as often as he could sneak away in the dead of night to see us. I know it was not one of the grooms who gave our secret away. I suspect someone in the kitchen saw the hampers of food being packed away, or perhaps a chambermaid asked where the king might be going off with a pack of toys. I do not know who told the queen of the shining ball of thread. All I know was that we heard the whinny of the black stallion in the yard at noon the next day, and I would have run out with my siblings. I would have been right with all of them if I weren't stuck in the tub, furiously washing the mud from out between my toes. I yelled for them to wait as only the youngest child can. They tumbled out into the yard, laughing and calling out my father's name. I heard an odd word, a harsh word, and suddenly I was sinking back down into the tub, my heart pounding, thinking only to hide, to make myself as small as I could. I heard a sudden rush of wings and a great squawking call as 7 swans took off past the window and leapt into the sky. They climbed higher and higher until they were gone from view. I do not know how she did not find me, but she never once came inside. It must have been twilight when the old woman came back from foraging in the woods with a basket of mushrooms and a cry on her lips. She hugged me, and we wept over my siblings as we found 6 swan feathers and the remains of the magic yarn laying trampled in the yard. I wound the threads up as I shed my tears. My heart resolved. As the old woman slept fitfully that night, I stole away the shining ball of yarn and a little food and headed once again back into the forest. That was a really hard night. For now I knew what lurked in the great forest beyond the safety of the tower. I was all alone this time. That was a hard time. But I also knew the forest better now, and knew how to slip among the shadows, unnoticed and unseen. I knew which roots and mushrooms and berries could be eaten. The old woman's knowledge had not gone to waste. I searched the woods till the sun and moon blurred together and the days knew no end. I followed the ball of thread until I knew the woods by heart. Each family of deer, each tree of squirrels, each patch of ivy were known to me then. Finally, in the densest thicket, in the very heart of the forest, long after the years had made me a woman, the last string of yarn rolled up to the door of a tiny hut. Inside were 6 beds, cramped together as tightly as they could be. I found myself a good hiding spot under one of the beds closest to the door where no one could see me, and right around sunset, I heard a great rustling of wings outside. 6 magnificent swans came flocking in through the doorway of that tiny shack, folding their feathers carefully around them. As I watched from under the bed, they turned to face one another and gently breathed. As their breath hit the other's wings, their feathers melted away, and suddenly there was Waylon and Dairen and Kian and Roisin and Arlen and Aiden, all stretching their limbs and pulling on clothes and standing together again. I leapt out from my hiding place, and you can only imagine how that little hut shook with joy as we all hugged, reunited once more. Then almost all at once they began to weep. "What is it?" I asked. "We only have the rest of this little hour between us to share before we turn into swans again," said Aiden. "We are so very tired." "Can nothing be done?" I asked feverishly. "Is there nothing that can break this magic?" "Nothing you can do, little sister," said Dairen bitterly. "It's a ridiculous spell, and not worth going through." "It's for her to decide," said Waylon gravely. "But it will be the hardest thing you've ever done. First, you may not speak a word or laugh for the next 6 years," said Arlen sadly. "Only breath may pass your lips. You would have to take up stinging nettles, the kind that grow in the woods or cemeteries," said Kian with a whispered hush. "You'll have to crush them with your bare hands and feet and twist them into threads without crying out once. You'd have to weave that stinging thread into 6 shirts during that time, never uttering a word or letting a laugh slip from your lips," said Roisin, stroking my cheek, "or it would all be in vain." "See, absolutely ridiculous," sniffed Dairen. "How many rules do you need for a spell?" We laughed at that, and it felt good to laugh, for already the shadows were stretching across the window, and feathers were starting to creep up Roisin's neck. We held each other close, and cried, and laughed, and the last thing we spoke aloud before the change was "I love you." Then there was the rush of wings, and they were gone, flying west into the sunset. I found a good supply of nettles a few days away, and started on my task. For a year, I worked alone, and then too, unbothered and wholly free with my own company. I found a great oak with huge sweeping branches for shelter and hung a hammock there. I missed my siblings terribly, but I knew I would see them again, so long as I kept my devotion alive within me. I had little inclination to laugh, and spent my days listening to bird song and the chattering of squirrels while I worked away. Until the 5th year, as the summer star rose again in the twilight, a clattering erupted through the woods around me, and suddenly a great king and his retinue of lords and servants came dashing up around my tree. I scrambled up higher, trying to avoid them, but they circled around, calling out to me, asking me my name and where I came from. I refused to say a word, only taking my work into a small bundle on my back and climbing higher. Finally, after many long attempts, the king himself climbed up to the very top and sat on a wide branch across from me. He was handsome enough, but still, I only wanted to be alone and shook my head as he tried to speak to me. Why wouldn't they leave me alone? Finally, he pulled me to him and threw his cloak around me to cover my rags, and brought me down, though I shook my head and kicked and tried to resist. He sat me before him on his horse, and rode back with his grooms and knights and lords loudly galloping behind him to keep up. He brought me to his castle. It was fine. He had turrets. He was very proud of that. He dressed me richly and had me sit beside him at feasts. Still always my hands were busy with their work, twisting and working the threads, stitching the fiery strands together. My hands still bear the sting of those days. No smooth lady fingers for me. These hands are home only in the stables. His answer was to give me fine gowns with long sleeves to hide the calluses. I did not speak a word, true to my bond. In those days, we did not know how to read or write. That was for the priests. I have long since taught myself that skill. I will never be found without my voice again. After a week, the king announced he'd be marrying me on the final day of the year. Here again, the stories like to split. Some say his mother was also wicked and hardened her heart against me, although as far as accepting a strange, mute, wild woman of the woods goes, she was kind, if not distant. Some say it was an evil archbishop or a grand adviser that egged the king on, but no, it was him. As I neared the end of my work and my impending nuptials, I only had a few nettles left to me from what I'd brought back from the forest. The churchyard was not far, though, and I resolved to steal away in the dead of night to collect the last few that I'd need for the final shirt. All 6 shirts sat ready for the final day of those endless 6 years. All that was missing was a final sleeve on the 6th shirt. I crept into the churchyard after the bells struck 3 in the morning. It was pitch black out, and though I carried my little candle, I still shivered. It sounds silly, but after years in the woods, I've still never heard anything as quiet as that cemetery at night. I made my way past the gravestones and crypts to the back corner where the nettles lay, and I gathered up what I could. But it was there that I was surprised by the king and a great rabble of those fine lords and ladies mixed in with regular folk, all screaming in my face about witchcraft. Of all things, accusing me of witchcraft. Oh, they had all led each other on, I can tell you. It was something to see them all set each other off like hot kindling. The hardest thing I have ever done was staying silent in front of those faces as they jeered at the bruised nettles and my scratched hands, clutching my shirts with shredded fingers. That was the hardest night I've known, friend. I still do not know what power kept my lips together in the face of that mob. as that fine king spat in my face. And they gathered the kindling there in the churchyard. I did not speak a word, not even as they piled the wood high around me and poured oil over my head. They tied my hands together and threw the shirts at my feet, hissed and called me a witch. My husband-to-be held the torch and spoke of duty and wickedness and temptations of the wilderness and nearly touched the flame to the wood. But there, from the east, was suddenly the rushing of wings on the dawn light. Then the flames were blown out as my family settled around me. Even with my hands tied, I threw the shirts over the heads of my kin, and the mob drew back in horror as the swans before them stood up as people once more. Waylon pulled me from the pile as I gasped out my thanks, my voice a cracked whisper after so many years. The stories finish with happily ever afters, with a nice little soapbox at the end where I get to tell my full story and everyone gets on their knees begging for forgiveness. And the king asks for my understanding, and of course I am so meek and so mild that I give it all at once, and we get married and have lots and lots of babies and everyone lives happily ever after. Stories, huh? We snatched a couple of cloaks from some terrified idiots in the crowd and covered my siblings as best we could. Arlen's wing still beat frantically out from her back, where the final shirt had lain unfinished around her shoulders. If I'd only had one more hour. We pushed past the spectators and we ran back to the forest. Once we were safely within the trees, I pulled that shining ball of yarn out from my pocket where it had waited for 6 long years, and we followed it as the miles turned to leagues across the kingdoms untold and realms unbordered, until it brought us back here, the end of the string trailing up to the old woman's welcoming arms, waving from the doorway deep within the woods.
Yes, well, I suppose we've added a bit more onto the original building, haven't we, my girl? Now it just makes up the dusty old North Tower, and we've expanded quite a bit since those days.
I keep begging for that addition to the coop. You know it needs a new roof, or the ladies won't lay for me when it rains.
Talk to Waylon about it. He and the lads are supposed to be seeing to repairs before the summer star peeks its nose out at us.
Don't think I won't. I've got dibs.
You always do, dear. You see, Pilgrim, each of us are on our own paths through the wilds. Sometimes, all we need is to trust the right yarn to wend our way home.
Home is a place that you choose, where you are chosen.
You were the one who chose the home here to begin with. Otherwise, the thread would never have unraveled to our step. The inn is a haven to all who need it, the refuge in the great woods, the last homely house of the mind. And you have found us right when you needed us most. Now, I'm proud to report that we've gotten the Earl and all but one of his grooms up to their rooms on the 3rd floor. Waylon got them all worked up into a drinking contest, and they've been snoring since the 3rd round. So now they're snoozing up and away where they can't do any harm till lunchtime tomorrow by the sound of it. Although, to be fair, Pilgrim, it looks like you're snoozing away out here where you can't do much harm either.
Who needs drinks when you've got cows for blankets? The hay's sweet and cozy, and you'll be asleep in no time with these ladies curled around you.
Pilgrim, when you've had enough of these big old fuzzballs, you feel free to come inside. You know that your key will show you the way up to your room when you'd like your bath and bed. Come along, Eliza. Time to come in for the night. you can hold that skein of yarn I've been working on for Roisin's new scarf. Least you can do for pinching perfectly good yarn in the middle of the night. I don't care how long ago it was. Good night, pilgrim, and rest easy, knowing the threads that have woven your path will let you rest easy tonight, here at the inn at the end of things. Good night. You've been listening to The Inn at the End of Things, an Acorn Arts and Entertainment production. Tonight's tale featured performances by Josie Eli Herman as Eliza the Stablemaster, and Luna Alexander as the Innkeeper. Tonight's episode was written by Luna Alexander, with production support from Josie Eli Herman and Michael Allen Herman. As our evening draws to a close, we'd like to pause here within our Hall of Patrons to thank the many wanderers, voyageurs, and fellow night owls who keep our hearth fires burning long into the night. Whether you're a member of our Patreon community or have donated independently, we salute you and say thanks. We couldn't do it without your support. This week's list of hallowed heroes includes Sarah McNitt, Amanda Logston, Jason Such, Brian LeDuc, Ruth Needler, Joanna Corina Palaska, Chris Hoffman Kraske, Patricia Tuma, John Stanford, Lindsay Harris Friel, Robin Schwalanek Krenzel. A special thank you to the Plymouth Community Arts Council for their sponsorship of our first season, and a reminder to support your local arts communities. May your generosity be returned threefold wherever the road finds you.